Right. So, as we said, we're going to start talking about individual applications of market research, starting with brand health. What is brand health? Um, Brand health studies are an assessment of where the brand stands in the consumer's mind. It is closely related to sales numbers. And in fact, where the brand stands in the consumer's mind affects the sales numbers, it impacts the sales numbers. But it is a little different from sales numbers, it is more than just the sales numbers. So there are other terms for it. Some people call it brand equity, some people call it brand standing. I prefer the word health because it's very similar to, it's a concept you can all relate to. How healthy is your child? How healthy is your pet? How healthy are each of us? Therefore, how healthy is the brand? Right? And therefore, I prefer the term brand health. But they all effectively mean the same thing. We don't need to get caught up with the terminology too much. So, why do we need to measure brand health? Or why is brand health important? Brand health is important because when your brand is healthy, you get the benefits of consumer loyalty. The consumer themselves come and buy the brand. The brand does its own marketing in a manner of speaking because the consumers then recommend it to others, right? So you get a lot of positive, you're familiar with this term, right? Word of mouth. Word of mouth. Sometimes it allows a marketer to command a higher price because a very healthy brand can command a price premium over what the other brands are there in the market. And it allows the marketer to launch brand variants. So if you have a Surf which is very well known for washing clothes, you can launch Surf Excel, and over time you can launch a product which is only meant for washing machines. Maybe over time you can launch a product which is only meant for dry cleaning. Over time you can launch a product which is meant for upholstery, right? The point is you've got an equity and you've got a very strong equity for being able to wash well, wash cleanly without damaging clothes. And therefore that can be extended across different categories, right? So it allows us to launch brand variants and brand extensions more easily. So this is why brand health per se is important to a marketer. And when a brand is healthy, how is that manifested? Now, when a human being is healthy, how is it manifested? We have good stamina, we don't have a BP problem, we don't have a cholesterol problem, we don't have a sugar problem, our voice is good, we're able to walk straight, we're able to walk fast, we're able to lift things, etc., 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 etc. Right? There are various aspects of human being in healthy. If a person is not healthy, you will fall ill often, your stamina will be poor, you'll get tired very easily, you won't be able, your digestion will not be good, you'll not be able to eat different kinds of foods, and so on and so forth. Likewise, a healthy brand has certain dimensions that characterizes it, right? And these dimensions are: one, the awareness for the brand will be high in the market. Two, it will have a high share of consumer purchase and usage behavior. Purchase and usage. Purchase is buying from the shop. Usage is actually using it for themselves. And while the two is almost 100% correlation, need not be exactly 100% correlation. It has a high share of mind. By that, what I mean is that many consumers have a good opinion about the brand, have a good disposition towards the brand. It is strongly positioned on the platforms and benefits. So the consumers, when they buy, say, a detergent, for example, they look for something which washes cleanly, they look for something which is not harsh on the skin, they look for something which is not harsh on the clothes, they look for something which is pocket friendly. There are many things that they look for. So a healthy brand is strongly positioned on each of these platforms, at least on the more important ones. So the healthy brand is thought of in a good way on the parameters where the consumer is really deciding between brands. And finally, a healthy brand enjoys good channel support. So what is channel? The channel is a retailer, right? and the distributor. So if you see in the first situation, the consumers go and ask for the brand, right, which is a sign of a brand being healthy. But if the consumer isn't asking for the brand, then another sign of the brand, the consumer goes and says, "Can you advise me which brand to buy?" The shopkeeper will recommend your brand. That's another sign of the brand being healthy. Okay, so far, can we go forward? So this is a conceptual framework for brand health, right? So here is our brand, and here are the two key things that the brand is trying to do. It is trying to enable pull. It is trying to ensure push, right? So let's go through this in some detail, because this is, in fact, to a great extent, this is the conceptual underpinning for how a brand works in the market. It's not just about how to measure brand health. It's really about how a brand works in the market, because measuring it derives from how a brand works in the market, right? So let's go through this in some detail. A brand is trying to do two things. It is trying to enable pull. What is pull? It is trying to make consumers come and ask for the brand. On the other hand, it's trying to ensure push. What is push? When the consumer comes to the shop and says, I want to buy a coconut oil, which brand do I buy? Or I want to buy some biscuits for my child, which brand do I buy? Or I want to buy a mobile phone as a gift for my fiancé, which brand do I buy? Which brand is it that the shopkeeper will recommend? That is push. So the brand is trying to primarily influence these two things through various activities. So how does it influence pull? It mainly influences pull through communication, meaning advertising and promotional ads and public relations and so on and so forth. And by communication, first, it is creating awareness. People should know that the brand exists. Two, people should think it is a good brand. It's a brand meant for them, and it's a brand that they should inquire about or buy or try. Three, it is trying to establish what the brand stands for. I stand for white, or I stand for clean, or I stand for pocket friendly, or I stand for soft on hands, or I stand for meant for affluent people. What do I stand for? It's trying to establish a position in the consumer's mind. Now, when the brand has succeeded in having a high degree of awareness, in having a very positive disposition from consumers, in clearly establishing a position for the brand, when all these things are met, what it does, it makes the consumer go and try the brand. Okay, so this is a job of marketing. Now, once this is done, if the product is good, once a consumer tries the product, if the product is good, then what happens is the consumer will adopt the brand. The consumer will say, I want to buy this brand again and again and again. So that is known as retaining consumers. Consumer retention is the job of the product. Now, if the consumer doesn't like the product, then no amount of marketing will make him or her buy it once again. Through marketing, you can make the consumer try the brand once. Then the product has to be good enough to make the consumer want to buy it again and again and again. Now, if the consumer buys it again and again and is very happy with it, they will go and talk positively about the brand to other people. In turn, this leads to more trial, right? In turn, that leads to better product experience. So this is a process. This is a what we call as a virtuous cycle. This is what happens when good marketing leads to good trial, good product experience leads to high level of retention, good product experience leads to positive word of mouth in turn leads to more trial, and because it is a good product, it leads to further retention, and so on and so forth and so on and so forth. This is a virtuous cycle of events, right? Is this pull side of it okay? This is what the brand is trying to do with the pull. Shall I go forward? Now let's talk about the other side of it. What does push? The brand will ensure that there's very good pack display on the shelves. When a consumer goes, they say, "Oh, this brand is here everywhere. Maybe it's a good product. Maybe they'll try it." The brand is trying to have plenty of price offs and schemes. Some of these price offs and schemes they're good for the consumer. Buy 2 packs and you get a third pack free kind of thing. But many of the schemes are also for the retailer. And that the schemes could be, if you sell so many tons in a month, then we give you a discount on your price and so on and so forth. Right? Now, through these things, it is trying to ensure dealer recommendation about the brand. It also gives free sample. All of us would have gone to supermarket sometimes and tried a free sample of a product. Now, through all these things, it is once again trying to create trial. And we know what happens when there is trial. Trial leads, if the product experience is good, it leads to consumer retention, and the consumer adopts a product and is happy. They give a positive word of mouth. That in turn leads to more trial. Just again, the same virtuous cycle is happening here as well. Is this clear? So this side of it is the pull, and if it goes well, this kind of virtuous cycle happens here as well. This side of it is the push, right? So together you have got the comprehensive picture of what the brand is trying to do. But there is one more extremely important thing which is required. Think in terms of which brand of mobile that you will buy. Are you very particular about which brand of mobile to buy? You will not just buy any and every brand, right? Will you spend a fair amount of time evaluating which brand of mobile to buy?
Yes.
Right. When you were back in school, were you using pencils and erasers? Did you think so much about the eraser?
No.
Right. But you thought about the pen?
Mm.
Which brand of pen to buy? Which brand of pencil to buy?
No.
Not so much. Eraser?
No.
Eraser even less than pencil? Right? Okay. Why? Because the eraser is what is known as a low involvement category. And by low involvement, the real meaning of the term low involvement is when the perceived cost of wrong choice is low. Meaning it doesn't matter if I buy a product which is not so good. Sometimes it doesn't financially matter. An eraser is just, whatever, a few rupees. It is not too expensive. But then a pen is also just a few rupees. But a pen can affect the handwriting. The pen can, blot and damage your. In my days in school, we used to use ink pens, fountain ink pens. Maybe you all grew up with ball pens. Maybe that's why it didn't matter so much. But the pen matters in terms of how clear the writing comes on the paper. Even that's only a few rupees, 10 rupees, 15 rupees at today's prices. Right? So it's not just price. It is the cost of buying the wrong pen can be high. So you're more selective. But the cost of buying the wrong eraser is not high. Right? Therefore, it is the marketer's job to make the consumer feel that there is a high cost of wrong choice. So think about it. There are people who are extremely loyal to whether they will have Coke or whether they'll have Pepsi or whether they'll have Thumbs Up or so on and so forth. In reality, a bottle of Coke is 20 or 25 rupees. If I have some soft drink, I don't like it, I can just say, well, forget that, just chuck it away, just have another soft drink. But why are consumers still so particular about what they will have? Because the marketer has succeeded in creating that sense of consumer involvement. The marketer has succeeded in creating that sense of the consumer feeling, hey, I can't afford to experiment with what soft drink. I must have the right soft drink. I'm thirsty. I need to feel refreshed. I need to feel relaxed. I need to feel energetic. I cannot just afford to have any soft drink. That is a marketer's skill. Right? The best marketers raise consumer involvement in the category so that the consumer doesn't experiment with different brands. When categories where consumer involvement is high, consumer loyalty tends to be high. Categories where consumer involvement is low, consumer loyalty tends to be low, and there's a lot of experimentation that's happening. So in a brand health study, we need to measure how well the brand is creating pull, how well the brand is creating push, and also to what extent the category itself sees a high level of consumer involvement. Are we okay with this conceptual framework for how a brand works? We'll go forward. Okay. So what do we measure in a brand health study? The broad headings of what we measure are awareness related questions, advertising recall related questions, consumer purchase and usage of brands related questions, consumer opinion questions, disposition, primarily disposition, people call it preference, people call it commitment, etc. Image and positioning questions, and questions related to offers and visibility and availability and packaging, etc. So these are the 6 broad sections of questions that we have, and as I said, here we also have involvement. It's an indispensable part of consumer commitment and consumer disposition towards the brand and towards the category. Right, so that's built into this commitment bit. We'll go forward. These are the 6 broad sections on which we have questions. Let's look at the individual questions under each of these 6 broad sections. So the first question is, what's a brand's awareness level today? Top of mind, unaided, after reading. Are you familiar with these terms? Top of mind, unaided, awareness? No, you're not. Okay. So, top of mind awareness is this. If I come and ask you, which brand of biscuits are you aware of? And let us just say which brand of soaps are you aware of? So let us just say you are aware of Lifebuoy, you are aware of Hammam, you are aware of Medimix, you are aware of Margo, you are aware of Dove, Lux, Vival, etc. Okay, this first mention is called top of mind, and all these brands together are called unaided awareness. So we are not shown a list, right? We are just asking which brands of soap are you aware of, and I mentioned all these 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 brands. So all these 7 brands is what enjoy unaided awareness with that particular respondent, and top of mind is for Lifebuoy. Now, after this, we show a list. Okay, and the list has further names like Rexona, like Chandrika, like Mysore Sandal, and what were some more names. So we show them the list with all the names and we say, are you aware of any of these brands? So the person says, I'm also aware of Chandrika and I'm also aware of Mysore Sandal. So these 7 brands plus Rexona and Mysore Sandal, okay, is called total awareness. These 2 alone is the aided awareness. After aiding with the list, aided with the list, right? That's what's called aided awareness. This is okay. So the question is, which brands of soaps are you aware of? The question is as simple as that. The next question would be, for which brand of soaps have you seen advertising recently? So again, we have top of mind, we have unaided, we have after aiding, and then sometimes when the respondent says, I'm aware of an ad for Hammam, for example, follow-up question would be, you said that you are aware of an ad for Hammam. Can you tell me what was shown in that ad? What was said in that ad? So what was shown and said in the ad is what we call content recall. And can you tell me what is the message that the ad was trying to tell you? What was the brand benefits the ad was talking about? That is a message recall. It can be called message takeout. It can also be called message comprehension. So the exact question is, you said that you're aware of, you've seen an ad for hammam. Can you tell me what is shown in the ad, what is said? So maybe the respondent says there's a boy who runs home and he has a bath and he feels very fresh and energetic after it. That is a content recall. Then we say, what do you think this ad is trying to tell you about the brand? What is the message the ad is trying to convey to you about the brand? So the person says, I think the ad is trying to make me feel that, anybody who uses hammam feels very fresh and energetic. Okay, so that is the message takeout or the message comprehension or the benefit understanding from the ad. Okay, we also have some questions called ad recognition and brand identification. What happens here is we show an ad, but we don't show the ad, we show still from the ad. You know what a still is, right? From the moving ad, you take one shot and you show it. That still will not have a brand name. So it is a still of the ad without the brand name. And we ask the person, have you seen this ad before? Yes or no. If the person says yes, then we ask them which brand is it for? And we don't give him any options, an open-ended question, and the person can write out the brand name. Now the person can give the correct brand name, which is terrific. He remembers seeing the ad and he correctly recognizes the brand name as well. Or the person can say, I remember seeing the ad, but I do not remember what brand it is for, in which case it is a wasted creative. What's even worse, the person can say, yes, I see the ad, but he gives the wrong brand name, in which case your advertising has actually gone to help some other brand. Now can you understand why this is such an important measure? Right? So the awareness section deals with top of mind awareness, advertising related question, and ad recognition questions. This section is clear? Can we go forward? Okay. The next set of questions relate to the consumer's behavior. So the question is, which brands of soaps have you ever bought? Or which brands of soaps have you ever tried? Okay. Which brands of soap do you currently use? Okay. So what happens is, for every brand, this will be the percentage of people who have ever bought the brand. And this is a percentage of people who are currently using it. Currently using it, ever bought it. This gap is the percentage of people who have lapsed from the brand. Now, a brand which is like, where the scenario is like this, the lapsing is too high. Whereas a brand where the scenario is like this, the lapsing is too small. Now, remember what I said earlier. The marketing can only make the consumer try the brand. It is the job of the product to make the consumer keep buying the brand again. So whenever lapsing percentage is high, it normally means either there's a product problem or it is not giving enough reason to buy again. It may not be a problematic product, but it is not strong enough to make the consumer buy again. It's not giving enough reason for the consumer to say, this is the brand that I should buy. Right? One of the two has to be true. Okay? So these two questions together are very indicative about how well the marketing is succeeded in making the consumers try the brand and how well the product has succeeded in making the consumers adopt the brand. Now from this, when consumers tend to say that I sometimes buy brand A, I sometimes buy brand B, then we know that brand A and B form one set. They're seen as like for like brands. That A can substitute for B or B can substitute for A. So you very often find consumers talking about, I normally buy Medimix, but if Medimix is not available, I buy Chandrika. So that tells us that, these are seen as like for like brands. So there is some similarity between them. Logically speaking, the similarity is probably some Ayurvedic base or something, but there is some similarity between them. Is this okay? Can we go forward? Right. So disposition is about consumers' opinion about the brands. Typically, the questions are, which is the brands that you like? Which is the brands about which you have a good opinion? The next question would be, do you have a favorite brand? Now, these two questions together will tell us which are the most preferred brands in the market, which are the brands that have a strongest disposition. So, whenever there's a high percentage of people saying that, I have a good opinion about this brand, and, actually it is my favorite brand, that's a very good sign for the brand. The next question would be, there are consumers who say, so for example, a consumer says, I have a good opinion about A, C, and F, and C is my favorite brand. So the consumer does not say about B. The next question is, what do you think about B? Then the person says, well, B is a brand that I will accept. See, B is not really one of the brands that I go and buy. But yeah, if other brands are not available, I'm okay buying it. So it's an acceptance kind of brand. Third, so what do you think about D? And what do you think about E? And what do you think about G? And the consumer says, I'm not going to buy D. I'm not going to buy E. I'm not going to buy G. These are brands that I do not feel like buying. So these are rejected brands. Right? And then we ask them to what extent, no, before I go forward, I'll just say one more thing about this. Any brand which has got greater than or equal to 20% of the target audience saying, I reject the brand is normally in trouble. It is on a downward path. I mean, in most categories, this will turn out to be true. If 20% of the market rejects your brand, either there is a problem with the product, or there is some negative publicity for the brand. Whatever the case might be, the brand is on a downward path and it urgently requires people to, take some corrective action. The next question will be, is there any brand for which you will pay extra? If they increase the price, will you continue buying? That's the brand's capacity to command a price premium, right? And then there is an important question here, the perceived cost of wrong choice, right? This is the extent to which, do you believe it's a mistake? We talked about this at length with erasers, we talked about it at length with pen. So to what extent are you particular about what brand that you want to buy? To what extent do you think it doesn't really matter which brand that you want to buy? Right? This is the perceived cost of the wrong choice. Right? So, and this is what, if you remember, this we said is consumer involvement. Now, to repeat what I said earlier, categories that have a high level of consumer involvement tend to see a lot of consumer loyalty. Categories that have a low level of consumer involvement tend to see not much consumer loyalty. They tend to see a lot of consumer experimentation across brands within the category. Are these set of issues clear? Can we go forward? Positioning. A brand can position on different things. A brand can position on core product parameters. It can position on benefits. You can position on things like, I have saffron, so I'll make the skin fairer, like someone fairness cream used to say at one point in time. Or I have poofa, so I have a better cooling impact. Or I have made from the latest technology, so my product is superior. Or do you know what VFM is? VFM. The VFM stands for value for money. So you say, for example, Sony is a premium brand. Samsung is a value for money brand. It's not cheap, but for the price, it gives very good value. Whereas Sony is a premium brand, right? So a brand can position on core attributes, or it can position on pricing. I'm seen as premium, or I'm seen as for the common man, or I'm seen as a value for money brand, so on and so forth. Or it can position on user imagery. What is user imagery? I'm meant for affluent people. I'm meant for the discerning consumer. I'm meant for the young and hip crowd. I'm meant for the traditional people who are value conscious. I'm meant for modern people. I'm meant for fit people. Right? User imagery. Pepsi said it very well. The choice of a new generation. I'm meant for people who think of themselves as a new generation, which is very different from the older habits of the previous generations. It's not just a physical thing, right? It's just a mental thing as well. Or you can talk about on benefits promise. What is a benefit? Benefit to the consumer could be self-confidence. Benefit to the consumer could be health. Benefit to the consumer could be fitness. Benefit to the consumer could be a long-lasting product that gives excellent value for money. Right? So the different ways a brand can position. And the question here would be, on a set of dimensions, on value for money, how strong is my brand positioned? On being meant for the intelligent consumer, how strong is my brand position? On being on the parameter of soft on hands, how strong is my brand positioned? Right? That's really what we're trying to measure here, so on and so forth. Is this clear so far? Right. A channel and other measures. So here we have questions about which brands does the consumer say is generally not available in the shop shelf, right? Because that will pull down. I mean, the worst thing that can happen is the consumer goes to the shop and says, I want to buy Medimix. And the shop says, oh, sorry, we don't have Medimix, they're out of stock. It just happened to be a lot with Amul curd at one time. You go to a shop and say, you want Amul, and many shops say, sorry, we don't stock Amul, right? Which brands are most noticeable? Which brands are priced very attractively? Which brands offer excellent consumer offers, memorable consumer offers, and offers that are really offering good value to the consumers? And which brands receive positive or negative word of mouth? I'll repeat, word of mouth. That is, the retailer is recommending or saying, no, don't buy that brand. It's not moving well. Nobody's buying it. Retailer can do that as well. He can kill a brand completely, right? The retailer can say, off late, there are some consumers complaining about the brand. That's it. People are not going to buy that anymore from that particular shop at least. Are we clear about what all we are measuring here? Awareness-related measures, behavior-related measures, disposition-related measures. Within awareness, we have got advertising-related, by the way. After disposition, we have got positioning, and then we've got channel and other related measures. Are we clear about this so far? Okay, fine. We'll go forward. Brand health studies invariably require a quantitative study, right? Which means they require a structured questionnaire, they require large and statistically valid sample sizes, and they require probability sampling. You'll remember that we talked about probability and non-probability sampling. So quantitative studies require probability sampling, require large statistically valid sample sizes, they require structured questionnaires, and a brand health study requires a quantitative research approach. It is measurement to a great extent. Okay. The actual process of data collection can be through face-to-face interviews, or can be through the telephone, or can be through online. It doesn't really matter. Depending on the specific situation, we can use different methods. Right? So shall we pause here and come back?